Then one that was really bad on a jump in Kuwait. I landed on a runway and got knocked out right on the runway
Oh,
and woke up on a backboard, sea collar, head taped down, and got taken to a hospital in Kuwait.
this is Hands Like Hide, a podcast for men who know the weight of a long day, the ache of sore hands, and the pull for something more. Through raw stories, biblical truth, and practical wisdom, we explore recovery, growth, and how to become the man you were intended to be. Because every job teaches, and every story has the power to transform you and everyone you lead. Let's get to work. Welcome to the Hands Like Hide podcast, where every job teaches and every story transforms. Today is a special day, not like the normal day where it's just me yakking away. We have an awesome guest today. His name's Sean Brennan. Let me read his bio to you, and I think that you're going to be as impressed as I was the first time I read this. So, Sean's been married for 32 years to his wife, Laura. They have 3 adult children together. He has 34 years of experience as an FBI agent and soldier in the 82nd Airborne Division, the 75th Ranger Regiment, and the 7th Special Forces Group. He spent 5 years deployed to various countries, including Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Lebanon, Mali, and Kenya. We got to circle back and talk about Kenya because I've been there too.
Have you?
Yes, Sean is on staff as a Christian counselor with Authentic Hope Counseling Services in Fredericksburg, Virginia. Bringing to this conversation to support his vast experience, he also holds a master's degree in pastoral counseling from Liberty University. He is a certified pastoral sex addiction professional, also known as a PSAP, through the International Institute of Trauma and Addiction Professionals. He's a board certified Christian counselor with the American Association of Christian Counselors. He is a certified in Eddie Caparucci's Inner Child Therapy model. He is also certified Pure Desire Ministries small group leader with 6 years of experience leading men's sexual addiction recovery groups. Sean, welcome to Hands Like Hide, brother.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's an honor to be here. First podcast ever, so yeah, kind of
Yeah.
a little nervous.
Well, the cool thing about podcasting, especially with a guy with your experience and all the different places you've been to and the untold thousands and hundreds of thousands of men you've talked to, not only like in your military career, but also in recovery groups, is it's just like having a conversation. That's,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. I'm trying to think of it that way versus an interview.
Nah, yeah, that's right. I mean, we're going to touch on stuff as you know, but like, so when I first read your bio, I mean, the first thing I thought was like, FBI agent, military, airborne division, all these different countries you've been to. I mean, it's a theme that we talk about a lot here. It's like every job teaches, every story transforms. So it's like, I can't imagine that your, I imagine your story is so much deeper than all of those places you've been and things you've seen and, experiences you've had. And say more about that. Like,
I could tell you through recovery, which I started in 2018 when I joined
mhm.
Conquer, November 2018 at a church up in Fairfax County. My work, my was definitely my identity. It was something that I was doing to overcome my own insecurities, my feelings about myself, my body. I'm not a particularly big guy. It was something that I really hated about myself. It was something that led to a lot of misery, in high school, in particular. And it's just something that I thought through all these different units and selection processes that one day I would arrive and like feel like a man. And it never happened for everything that I did. And I kept on going back over to various war zones voluntarily, leaving my family behind over and over and over again, thinking one day I would get there, one day I would feel like I hoped to feel about myself. And then I didn't ever know that till Conquer
Right.
and starting to just sort of dissect my childhood experiences, my career, and what it meant to me. And so the big takeaway for me would be when you talk about every job teaches, is that I learned, put my identity and my value into my job and my career, was just very harmful to me because, and not to mention what I did to my wife by leaving her to raise our kids for 5 years out of the first 25 years of our marriage until I became a believer in 2018. I didn't really have anything else to lean my identity on as I learned about being a Christian man. Things changed pretty quickly for us and for our marriage, for me, and for our marriage, because I started realizing that I'd pushed my responsibilities off to lead my family, raise our kids alongside my wife on her, thinking that I was some sort of hero. Like,
Mm,
hey, look at me. I'm going off to
mm,
protect America and make the
mm,
life, make the world as safe for my children and this and that. Those are all just not true. I was doing it for me,
mm.
and realizing that was very helpful. Also embarrassing in a way.
Oh,
Like
for sure.
look at what I thought I was doing versus what I was actually doing.
It's
Big
like
difference.
what's the word I'm thinking of? It's sort of like that facade or a mask that you're wearing, right? Your military
Big time.
guy doing all this thing. And
Yep.
so, like, when you were deployed over there in those countries, Ranger Regiment, Airborne, like, what did you do? Like, what was your MOS?
I started off infantry in the 82nd and 1st Range Battalion, and then I went to Special Forces selection and then Special Forces 7th Group at Fort Bragg. But I got out in 92, so I got, I did some. Well, I did deploy for about a year and a half of that time for the Army. I was there for did invasion of Panama with the 82nd, did Desert Storm with the Ranger Regiment. But the bulk of my deployments actually were in the FBI.
Oh, no kidding.
3.5 years of my deployments were actually FBI.
Oh, wow. And what did you do? What did you do with them? Like security stuff or?
The Bureau of FBI has a lot more people overseas than anyone realizes, and we have huge equities overseas. So the title is Assistant Legal Attaché, but I would say Assistant Country Director would be like the civilianized version of it. In Islamabad, Pakistan for a year, 2019 to 10.
Yep.
And then I was the Legat Country Director in Iraq, 2018, 2019. No, 2017, 2018. And then in between, I did a lot of travel, 90 days, 100 days, an overseas counterterrorism squad, and then also on the FBI's fly team, counterterrorism division fly team. So we would be over there working, we'd be in work with the military, we'd work with embassies, representing FBI equities in all these cases that have ties internationally.
What's a fly team? A terrorism fly team? What's that?
It's a group of about 40 or so folks at the actually counterterrorism division of the FBI, which runs all the counterterrorism division cases. And they specialize in deploying overseas and embedding and working with host nations, working with the military, working with other agencies. So they bring the FBI's capability and resources to the interagency overseas. I was there for a total of maybe 3.5 years.
Got it. So, long story short, basically what I'm hearing is you've seen some stuff. You've been there and
I
seen some stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little uncomfortable with that,
Sure.
saying that, because
Yeah.
I know of a lot of people in the course of doing all this. You meet a lot of people who are
Sure.
doing some wild and amazing things, and you're like, wow, I got nothing on them.
Yeah.
So I'm just not comfortable saying that, but I did what I could, proud of what I got to do, and the experiences were amazing.
Yeah.
And because the best work, in my opinion, is when you're overseas because you're pretty much figuring it out yourself. There's nobody else there, and you got to make it happen. And I like that.
Hmm. So you talked about like you mentioned Conqueror, and totally we're going to get into that because that's for you listener who's listening to this or watching the video. I met Sean several years ago in a Conqueror group, and that's how we first made that connection. He was actually the group leader at the time, and was a huge role model for me, kind of moving through the initial stages of my recovery. And so when you mentioned being overseas, trying to figure out a lot of this stuff on your own, the first thing that
Yep.
came to my mind is so many guys who are stuck in unwanted behaviors, sex addiction, porn, the whole gamut of unwanted behaviors. I don't need group. I don't need help.
Yep.
I can handle this. I can handle
Right.
this. I'm a man. I can handle this. Right.
Yep.
And so, you know, I can imagine if I was in your shoes. Well, let me back this up. Let me just say in my own story, for
Sure.
years and years and years, I know I had an issue to deal with, and I wasn't going to step in group. I was just going to pray harder. I was going to read my Bible more. I was going to white knuckle it, as they say.
Yep.
And it wasn't until I had to reach that point where, in my situation, it was with the rock bottom moment of my wife discovering some things, and then just reaching this point where it's like I can't move forward and figure it out on my own
Yep.
because it's not working for me anymore, right?
Yep.
So say more about that. Like, obviously with your experience and your counseling experience and practice, we, how has that contributed, that whole mindset, to your own healing, your own journey, and working with other guys?
Well, I mean, I've definitely identified with what you talked about of saying, okay, I can stop because I wanted to stop over and over again and would just find myself drawn back in. And I didn't really even know about recovery groups. I just didn't look into it. I just figured I would be able to stop. And it just never happened. I mean, I made very sincere commitments to my wife to do it several times, and it would just come back because I had no idea what I was dealing with. And I was able to put a stop to it finally in a year in Iraq, about 9 months in. Got there in 2017. So November, I read the book Wild at Heart by John Eldridge. A
Mhm.
friend of mine, Paul, talked me into going to a veterans retreat called Operation Restored Warrior, a Christ-based program for men struggling, veterans, first responders struggling with PTSD and just life. So the first step of going there was to read that book, and what I learned from it, because I was not a believer at that point, raised Catholic, left it when I went to college, never looked back until age 52. And I read that book, and I right away, strangely, almost sort of backed my way into faith by first understanding that Satan was real and he was running my life and he was
Mhm.
using me to victimize my wife, who I realized at that point a woman is the crown of creation, and I was victimizing God's daughter with how I was acting, anger. It was actually an even bigger issue for me than addiction. So strangely enough, by first believing and understanding Satan is operative in the world, and I was basically working for him, I made the commitment and I was able to stop with the porn in November 2017. I came home from Iraq in February, went to Operation Restored Warrior in March, where I became a believer through an amazing 4-day process. Been able to hold on to that sobriety since then.
That's awesome.
And I did not get into group actually until later in 2018. And this is very much divine intervention, or a divine appointment, I'd call it. Is I'm looking for a church now that I'm a new believer. And through somebody I'd met 5 years ago, friend of a friend, who I'd helped train Marines on evidence recovery. And we end up in contact by email, and he says, "Hey, you ought to come up and try our church, Burke Community Church in Fairfax. We've got a lot of veterans, we got a lot of contractors, government people. I think you'd really like it." So I went to their breakfast, and then a man who came a good friend, Jake, gets up on stage there to announce Conquer.
No kidding.
And that's the divine appointment. Because you look at it at that point in time, about 7% of churches in America had any sort of program in the sexual addiction arena. Now it's 10%, according to the Barna study from 2024. But so I think just half hour, church a half hour away from me, I never would have set foot in that if it wasn't for that contact from that friend. And I'm looking at Jake and I think, I don't need this because I'm not doing this anymore. But you know what? This would be really neat to like give back. So I felt the call even before I was in group of like, hey, this is something you can do. And
Nice.
then by joining group, I right away understood that, my sobriety was hanging by a thread. And I was riding the wave of new faith.
See,
Um,
and that's where I think a lot of people, and myself included. So there was a time early on before actually getting into recovery where I went a year without masturbating or watching porn, right? I went a year. And so I thought, "Oh, I'm good." Right?
yeah,
But no, it was the thread and the thread snapped and then I was like right back into all of it, right?
yeah,
So and I think something you said, and I want to circle back to, you mentioned anger. And so
yeah,
like, you know, as guys go through this process, a lot of times you learn about like different types of addictions, and I've talked about it too on this channel.
yeah,
You've got substance stuff, and then you've got process addictions, and then you have like emotional addictions, and then you get into even like the relational stuff. And from my understanding, and by all means, bring your expertise to this idea that I have.
for sure.
They're sequentially. So if you have like a substance addiction, uh, for me, it was nicotine and
Uh,
alcohol.
yep.
Until I got over a handle on that, I couldn't even really deal with the process addiction of like, pornography and masturbation.
Yeah, I agree.
And then you said something really interesting, and let's talk more about that. Once you dealt with the porn, you realized, man, anger, that's the third level down. That's
Yep.
really something going on. So say more about that. Like, and did your active service in war zones? I mean, was there any PTSD issues that you dealt with that kind of contributed to that?
Good question. I was convinced I had PTSD. I never went to get help. I never was diagnosed. But as I went through recovery, I understood that it was not PTSD. It was the addiction. It was the shame. It was the anger. And the anger, I used to say, was just what I saw modeled in my house. And I just kind of took it on. And I was going through continuing education research for my PSAP, pastoral sexual addiction professional. I was actually sitting, right here in that couch. And if you ever heard of Jenna Riemersma, she does the internal family
Yes,
system stuff.
absolutely.
Amazing. So she was a speaker at this research, and she said, "Hey, we're going to do what." I can't remember what exactly she called it, but it was essentially a regression exercise. And she said, take into consideration something that you want to understand better. And I was kind of like, oh, this is not going to work. This doesn't sound like, but I said, you know what? I'm going to look at my anger, because I was doing better at that point, but not anywhere near where I wanted to be. So I sat down there and literally she's talking on Zoom and she's like walking you backwards. It was weird, not quite hypnosis, but almost felt like it. And I just hit me like a ton of bricks. I remember my hair standing up and just like the flush. And I remember from childhood, and it's happening to me right now, because I was so afraid, so miserable, so unhappy in high school, middle school. I remember the conscious decision to try to become so angry, no one would mess with me. Like, oh, that guy's crazy. Don't, and it didn't work, but it certainly stuck. And it was speaking of masks, it was almost like a suit I put on of anger,
Yeah,
and that somehow that was going to make me safer.
yeah,
And it became really my personality. It's unbelievable what my wife put up with and how long she put up with it. And I'm so blessed that she did, because now what we have together is amazing. But yeah, so going back to the PTSD, maybe a little bit. I mean, I saw some things in my time in travel, and a thing I did not like about myself is I felt like I was overly sensitive to
hmm,
what I was seeing and what I was involved with. And one of the things I said to the guys at Operation Restored Warrior when they walked you through this like half day process of kind of going deep into your childhood trauma, those kind of things. As I told them, darkness sticks to me. I always felt like when I was over there and involved with all these things, bomb scenes,
yeah,
printing, fingerprinting, and taking pictures of dead suicide bombers in a morgue, stuff like that would just get into me in a way that I felt weak. And I just felt like things hung on to me longer and it made me sadder. So that I was calling PTSD. I was also
mm,
saying I used to use the excuse of concussions, multiple
mm.
concussions. and
Okay. Tell me more
thinking,
about that.
well, you see all the stuff about football.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hmm.
I can't remember what that
Is
is
it
called specifically.
CET, maybe something like
Yep.
that?
Yep.
CTE, something like that. Yeah.
So I had nowhere near the number of concussions, but I had a couple of them, but then one that was really bad on a jump in Kuwait. I landed on a runway and got knocked out, dragged on the runway,
Oh,
and woke up on a backboard, C collar, head taped down, and got taken to a hospital in Kuwait by helicopter. So that it was a bad one. It took me a while to get over that. Point is that I was using that as an excuse. And I remember at one point my mom even suggesting that my anger was derived from concussions. I don't think that's true anymore. I
mhm.
think it's what I said before, is I put it on like a suit in hopes that it would get me some peace. Didn't
See,
work, but I kept on wearing it. I kept on doing it.
interesting. So, I don't know. So as a child, I'm just processing with you, right? So like as a
Mhm.
child, anger, I'm gonna just be angry so that people will just leave me the heck alone. So you
Yep.
take on that, and then
Yep.
you get into a field where I mean, you care about people, obviously. Otherwise, you wouldn't be working in the field you're working in now,
Yep.
helping men
Sure.
recover. So like
Sure. Sure.
you're very sensitive and you care about people. And now you're working in a field though where you're fingerprinting bomb victims and seeing situations and scenarios that create anger, like righteous anger. So
Yeah.
just like what came to me when you were just kind of telling all those stories is, I believe that we are wounded in the place of our giftedness,
I've heard that. Yeah, that's a good one. Yep.
right? So it's like,
Ah, yeah, that's pretty good.
so for just to be angry as a child, no one's going to mess with me. And then to get into job situations and a career that produces a lot of angry against terrorism, um, and evil like that. I mean, dude, you were just like, it was like the vow or the promise you made to yourself as a kid. Satan just said, okay, we're going to reinforce that
Mm,
magnitudes more throughout your life. I mean, holy
yeah.
cow, man.
That's a good point because I have heard that Satan wounds you in the place of your giftedness the most. And that also, because obviously that's why he is after you or he fears you, right? I don't know,
Yeah.
fears you, maybe not the right word, but he knows your potential. He tries to keep you from realizing it. Because I definitely feel like as I look back in my non-believing phase of life, there's a lot of things God protected me from when I wasn't a believer. So there's definitely guardrails. I felt like God basically kept me viable till I was 52. And then I do believe that his intent was to use the story I have of the things I've done, and it just makes me able to appeal to men and maybe
Oh,
be
yeah.
somebody they would trust because I'm also, I'm being somewhat open here about my background in, addiction and such. In a group, I am like wide open,
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
and that gives people a comfort. So,
I was, I was, I was in a group once. I was co-leading, helping co-lead the group, and it was like one of the first meetings. And I tried to be vulnerable, and that's one of the core woundings for me since childhood is like I've always just like what's the term? I wear my heart on my sleeve, right? So it's like
mm,
if I'm feeling it or what I'm thinking, I just kind of like put it out there, and
yeah,
also sensitive, and so that was a huge source of a lot of pain to get me to just like keep your mouth shut, just keep your mouth shut, right? And so uh, I can remember in one group, just like you say, in group to just be open. I just shared some stuff really early on, open book. And later on, one of the guys came up to me and was like, dude, the way you were able to just be open about your story and some of the things that you've done and seen and been through gave him the power to say, okay, I can do this too, you
yep,
know? And it's
yep,
like having that ability to go first.
yeah,
And to connect that to a Bible verse, like what I'm thinking is, doesn't Paul say something like, "Follow me as I follow Christ"? Somewhere in the New
yeah,
Testament, he has that verse, "Follow me as I follow Christ." So it's like,
yep,
and you have 6 years leading groups, you have this master's degree, pure desire ministry, small group leader. Obviously, I mean, say more about the groups you've led and the process that you have discovered to say, like, here's what works, here's what doesn't work well, just to give, the dude who's listening to this, and I like to just try to connect, like, again, hands like hide, it's for working guys. Some, I always picture the guy who's, you know, building a house, paving a driveway, you know what I'm saying? Running an excavator, loading the dump trucks, whatever it could be. I'm always like picturing guys like that because that's who I am. I'm that type of a guy. So, you know, what would they need to know for them to say, you know what, I'm tired of doing it by myself,
Yeah.
and I'm ready to step into a group and say that, figuring it out on my own isn't working anymore.
I mean, first, just the experience I've had co-leading right now, maybe my 14th or 15th Conquer group, which I think is the most awesome and perfect sort of entry level to
Well,
recovery group.
what is Conquer? What is a Conquer group?
So Conquer is used to be Pure Desire's product. Now it's on the Soul Refiner site, which is run by Kingdom Works. Um, So Pastor Ted Roberts, the founder of Pure Desire Ministries, who's also the featured speaker in the Conquer series, has an awesome story. He's a Vietnam veteran, fighter pilot, and he also was an infantry platoon leader in Vietnam at the
Wow.
same time, which is a strange thing to me that a pilot would end up leading infantry, but that's what he did. So he's got
Wow.
an amazing story, horrible childhood, six stepfathers, process coming through the home and beating them and such. But so he's a speaker, and what he did was he worked with Dr. Patrick Carnes, the grandfather of sexual addiction recovery, one of the earliest books written on it, and he took the methodologies that Patrick Carnes discovered or wrote about, and he put a Christian layer on them. So what they call it
Okay.
is biblically based, clinically informed approach.
Got it.
10-week course. The version I run, I actually add 5 meetings because it's so much content. And the first 2 times I went through it was 10 weeks. And it's just like by the time you kind of figure out what that 1 week is about, it's like, oh man, I got to move on to the next. And you just kind of, nothing kind of stuck, I thought.
Yeah.
So we slowed it down a little bit. What I tell guys that are reluctant to get into group is I would just say, just try it. And what you're going to find is it's the best group of men you'll probably ever be part of and ever meet. Um, I've met, I like everybody that I meet in this environment. I like because everybody for the first time in their lives is being fully real and
Yeah.
vulnerable and talking about what's going on in their life and what's
Yeah.
been happening to them and their challenges and struggles and what they went through in childhood. And for the first time ever, they can be honest. And as soon as you walk into that room and realize everybody in this room is a very normal person, not like whatever stereotype you may have about people,
Hmm.
because what the enemy loves to do is keep us in isolation and make us think that no one else is like me. No
Yeah.
one else is struggling like you.
Yep.
You are uniquely and completely broken.
Yep.
And that is utterly and absolutely untrue. I mean, the percentage of porn use in the church, according to the Barna study, is 54% of practicing Christians are
Mm.
dabbling in porn at least monthly, many far more.
Mm.
So it is super prevalent in the church. It's even more prevalent in the secular world. And once you walk in there and realize, oh man, these guys get it and they get me, there's a massive release of shame. Doing it alone, I would, I suppose people do break free and,
Mm.
on their own. But they don't come to groups, so I don't know about them.
Right. Yeah.
But, and maybe some even get, sort of hands laid on them and it's prayed away. Maybe
Right.
that happens. It's certainly entirely possible that God could do it. I don't think he does it often because I actually believe that he would be doing you no favors to just take that away, that
Yeah.
particular issue away from you, because what group does is it's sanctification. It's
Yes.
going back and picking up
Yes.
the pieces and understanding what is holding you back in life, because it's not just making you an addict. It is holding you back across the board. It's damaging your
Yeah.
relationship with your wife, your kids. You're less capable at work. You're less involved. You're distracted. You're not present. All of these things are going on in your life. And if God were to just say, okay, I'm just going to take that addiction off you and leave all the other brokenness, um, that is not helpful. So
Right.
you get into recovery group and you go back and you pick up the pieces and figure things out. And as you break free, the it's just like the world opens up and like
Right.
the leaves are greener, the air is
Right.
cleaner. You
Right.
just become more present.
There was I read in a book, it might have been Facing the Shadows by Patrick Carnes, maybe another one. I don't remember, dude. I've read so many freaking books at this point in time, but it's
Dude,
like
me too.
they yeah. They were talking about noticing colors and different things like that. And I remember like a couple years into recovery, maybe the second year, I just remember driving somewhere, hauling a load of something, and just noticing fall and noticing that
Yeah. Yep.
dude, the leaves are just, and I remember like talking to my wife, I'm like, Sarah, do you see how incredible the leaves are this year? Like they're like brighter than I've ever seen. And
Yep.
and just realizing like, well, no, they've always been that bright. You're
Right.
just so in your own head with trying to medicate and numb this addictive process that you have going
Yep.
on, right?
Yep.
And you talked about in group too, like so three of the most powerful words that I've ever heard is yeah, me too.
Yep. 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 Yep.
Because
Exactly.
like, getting into a group of guys and so, for me, truck driver, diesel mechanic, uh, in group with a doctor, in group with a tired guy, in group with a college student, in group with a stay-at-home dad, in group with a pastor, in group with a military gentleman, right? So it's like, and you just look around the circle and you're just like, dude, these are normal everyday people.
Yep.
And then you have the guy who says, "Yeah, me too." And you're going, "You mean I'm not the only one who did
Yeah.
that or feels this way or thinks this way?" No,
Yep.
man, I struggle with that all the time. And like what I've experienced is like you could read the Bible that says God is love. Okay. But when
Yep.
you sit across from a man and you feel that love when he says, "Yeah, me too," no
Yeah.
shame. I mean, you can't, no wonder the autumn leaves are brighter, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree, man. Yeah, I've had that very experience. You just become aware of things you were just blindly walking past your whole life before. Um, and it's amazingly powerful. And then just all sorts of, I don't know, goodness opens up in your life, not to mention the time you've wasted in this, and creativity returns. I'm convinced a big part of why men are not serving as much in church is that a lot of them are just held back and they don't feel worthy because
Yep.
of this. And Satan loves that
Yep.
because we are supposed to be leading, and uh,
Yeah.
and I sure was not leading my family prior to being saved, prior to getting into recovery, where I actually learned what I'm supposed to be doing as a Christian man, husband, and father, and that's like my favorite topic now. I love working in the recovery field, but my what I like is that it's not about I try to help guys understand, hey man, it's just not about stopping this bad, unwanted thing. It's about becoming the man God designed you to be. And the Bible
Hmm.
says we're supposed to be. And as long as this is in your life, you cannot be that man.
So
Um,
you're talking about uh living life approaching something new.
yep. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I always call it, and this is actually Jay Stringer, Unwanted, the
Hmm.
book Unwanted. He calls it a freedom for approach versus a freedom from approach. Freedom from being, I'm a hunted man. I'm just trying to get this thing out of my life and not really thinking about why. Because the freedom for is, what am I going to do as a free man? Also, why I don't like sobriety. Achieving sobriety is part of the absolutely, it's the beginning of the process. You have to
Right.
achieve sobriety,
Right.
and then as you heal and as you grow and you stop looking back over your shoulder, for your addiction, and you're starting to look up and forward for what God intends for you to do. Because I really truly do believe that we are each created with a unique capability that will not be delivered to the world if we don't
Hmm.
step
Hmm.
into it. Yeah, and I believe I'm lucky enough to have found that thing in the process of recovery as I've discovered that's what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right.
Um,
What do you think? Is there a difference between sobriety and recovery?
Sobriety is part of the recovery process because recovery would involve first getting sober, then working on healing the wounds and issues that led you to have a need for that activity.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because I mean, what I always tell guys is, and I love this statement. It's from Matt Dobschuet's
Hmm.
Porn Free Radio. Porn is not the problem; it's the solution. What we need to do is understand what is it a solution for in your life,
Got
because
it.
it actually is serving a very unique, a very legitimate purpose in your life. It's doing something for you that
Right.
you need. And this is
Right.
right out of Jay Stringer. So what we need to do is figure out what do you need from this. And Eddie Caparucci, who wrote about the inner child, is he says 80% of overcoming addiction is just understanding why do you do
No
this.
kidding. 80%.
Yeah. And that number, it may be somewhat arbitrary that, the 80%, but it's when you understand why you can now start to make different decisions because I know what this was doing for me. How am I going to replace it with constructive, productive, Christ-like things that I'm supposed to be doing?
Yeah, see, so I talk a lot about self-awareness. Self-awareness is key. Like
Yeah.
I say that a lot. Self-awareness is key. And Paul talks about that too in Romans, right? The things I want to do, I don't do, and the things I don't want to do, that's what I do. And
Yeah.
then it's just back and forth tug. And so like back to the sobriety versus recovery thing, when you were talking about freedom from versus freedom to, like that whole idea,
Yeah.
what I hear is like an avoidance mindset versus like an approach mindset.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so your motivation for doing something is like in addiction, our mindset is I'm doing this to avoid that,
Yep.
right? So, and then
Yeah.
in
Good way.
recovery, our mindset should shift from I'm doing this to approach something there. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Something ahead, right? We're growing towards something. So for me, I like to look at it like sobriety would be measuring the days since relapse, right? So it's like you're looking
Yep.
back. It's the freedom from kind of perspective versus
Yep.
recovery is like you're constantly growing. Jordan Peterson says like if you grew 1% every day, how much would you grow in a year?
Yeah.
Like you couldn't
Yep.
even measure it as huge, right? So like for
Yep.
me,
Yep.
like that's recovery.
Yeah. I like that 1% better concept a lot.
Yeah. So you have a specific kind of approach that you're working with right now, if I understand, right? There's reverse engineering
Yep.
sort of goals. Say more about that.
I ran a reverse engineering group for the first time at my church, following a recent Conquer group, because when we got done with Conquer and everybody was, hey, what are we going to do next? Basically, we don't want to break up. And I pitched something I've always wanted to do, which is to use Pastor Jim Bergen's sermon series called Reverse Engineering. He's out of a mega church in Colorado called Flatirons. And I was introduced to him, fortunately, right after I came out of ORW, because his thing is biblical manhood. Is
Mm,
it strong, Christ-like men who lead their families, lead in the community, etc. But in a biblical way, like in accordance with Ephesians 5:25, sacrificial servant leadership to our wives and our family and our kids. But so he has an 8 sermon series called Reverse Engineering, and his concept essentially is how can you hit a target if you don't even know what you're aiming for? And
got it.
we're lucky as Christian men that we can look to the example set by Jesus for who we're supposed to be pursuing, to become like. So what he does is he walks through what does that look like from a biblical perspective in 8 sermons, talking about just manhood in general, husband, father, and just details out what we're supposed to be doing. So I used that sermon series, and then I used a process I got from a coach named Ray De La Nuez, who's a Marine officer. He has a website called Becoming Men. He's a coach. What he did was take the military decision-making process, the book Atomic Habits, and the Bible, and he made an awesome step-by-step 7 or 8 step process of developing your life vision
Wow.
for who you want to become from the strategic level to the operational to the tactical, the daily. And that's where the atomic habit stuff comes in about how do you actually make change in your life, the 1%
Yep.
concept you talked about. So what we did was we took the sermon series and that process. I used ChatGPT to make it a bit more of the Christ-likeness in Ephesians 5:25 into it, and we just went through the process, watched the sermon, had assignments from the life vision planning process, and we come back in each week, brief it to each other, critique each other, and then all right, next sermon, next homework assignment to build it out. It's hard to know what you're supposed to be doing day by day if you don't even know what you're trying to become.
100%.
And
Yeah.
so it's a phenomenal process. I love it. It was very well received. We followed it with a this uh, red bracelet there representing the blood of Christ. We did a ceremony at the end. My pastor Jeff came and gave a small sermon at it. We invited the families, and my wife even spoke, which was awesome. I wanted them to hear from her, not me. Because it's for one thing for them, for me to get up there, oh, look at what a difference this made in my life. Versus my wife gets up there and says, this made a difference. Um,
There's yeah, because you ask a guy, how's your recovery going? Great. How's things between you and your wife? Going great. It doesn't count unless she says it.
yeah,
If your
yeah,
wife says you're in good recovery, if your wife says your relationship is going great, then things are going great.
yeah.
Like that's the truth.
Yeah, and as an example, I mean, she watched, I only recently learned it early on when she heard me talking about Jim Bergen and the reverse engineering series. She went and watched them, and I didn't know that. And then at one point, I mean, I've been wearing this bracelet.
Right.
I had to order. It's broken multiple times. I just keep on getting a new one. But I've been wearing it since 2018. When it broke one time, she got on the internet and ordered me a new one.
Cool.
That meant a lot. Like, wow, this has made a big impression. And for my wife to get up there because she's a teacher, but she doesn't really enjoy public speaking.
Right.
Uh, just she got up there and just was amazing, and it was so impactful for them to hear from her versus me.
Wow. Well, thanks for sharing all that, dude. I know we're about out of time here. So where can guys find you if they want to connect with you more or get more information on this group that you just kind of process through and all that?
Yeah, they can reach me at the Authentic Hope Counseling Services in Fredericksburg, Virginia. I'm on that webpage. They can click on the contact Sean button, or I can be reached at Sean, SEAN
Hmm.
dot authentic hope at outlook.com.
Yeah, and I'll put those links and stuff in the show notes as well for people to click on them and reach out to you as well and everything. So cool, authentic hope. So, Sean, in closing, what is your favorite thing about leading men?
It's hard to say favorite thing. One, seeing them get hope
Yeah.
that, oh, I can actually do this. And then the other part is getting to watch it happen and essentially being front row seat, to God working in men's lives and just seeing change and just seeing them do something they thought, I will never, ever be able to get over this. I mean, because I thought, I mean, I had the level of despair I had. I just thought, I'll never beat this. I'm going to die an addict.
Yeah, yep.
Um,
Yep.
and, and so just being part of that is just amazing. I also just love teaching and I love researching and I love just being able to present like, okay, this is this is going to help. Let's try this. And just to see you guys like seize on it. It's just awesome to be part of. It's the
Yeah.
most for all the things I got to do in life, but back in the military or in the FBI, the most important rewarding thing I do is help men in recovery and
It's
watch their marriages be restored.
it's more thrilling than jumping out of an airplane, isn't
It is. It is.
it?
It is.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
more
Sean,
important, that's for
then
sure.
yeah, more significant, no doubt.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Sean, thank you so much for your story, for your openness and vulnerability, and just for talking about all that stuff, for digging into some of your anger a little bit. I hope and pray that, um, yeah, somebody will hear this and think, do I struggle with anger? Maybe I do, and they'll look up a Conquer group, or they'll look you up at Authentic Hope Counseling and connect with you there, and man, that'd be awesome. Thank you so much for your time and
No,
for
my
your
pleasure.
story.
No, thank you, Charlie. I really appreciate it. And you made it easy. You're very good at this. You may be very comfortable.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And it's just me giving back, man, because like I said, years ago, I was shaking knees and scared to death. And, you shared vulnerably and openly when you went first in group, and it just kind of, you led the way. So I've been following you, brother. It's good.
I appreciate it, Charlie.
Thanks so much, Sean. You have a great evening, and thanks for being on Hands Like Hide.
You have a good
Bye.
evening. Bye bye.